The gospel reading is Mark chapter 5, beginning with the 21st verse. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered about him, and he was beside the sea. Then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he fell at his feet and besought him, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." And he went with him. And a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had had a flow of blood for 12 years, and who suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, "If I touch even his garments, I shall be made well." And immediately the hemorrhage ceased, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone forth from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And the disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had been done to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house some who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But ignoring what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, he saw a tumult of people, weeping and wailing loudly. And when he entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a tumult and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. Taking her by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And immediately the girl got up and walked. She was 12 years of age. And they were immediately overcome with amazement. And he strictly charged them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
A miracle, two, actually. We'd probably like Jesus to dash off a miracle or two for us. But when I think this, I'm reminded of the great German theologian Jürgen Moltmann died recently, made it to 98 years old. He wrote about this one time. He said that he said, if anything, we focus too much on the miracles. He said Jesus didn't really come to work miracles. He said the miracles are just signs. They are foretokens of what Jesus actually came for, which is our salvation. He says at the end of the day, we're saved not by Jesus' miracles, we're saved by Jesus' wounds. Like, I love that thought so much. I was trying a couple weeks back to start thinking about the sermon, what I would say, the approach that I would take. At first, I got on the idea of Jesus' interruptibility. Jesus' interruptibility. Jesus is always interruptible, right? Jesus is, when the story begins, he's doing something important already, but he's interruptible. He hears that there's a child in need. Will he go? Of course he will go. And on his way to try to help this little girl and her father, her family, he's interrupted again by one that has to sneak up in the crowd and brushes the hem of his garment. He's interrupted again. And I thought about, if Jesus was so interruptible, then how can we be any less so? right? He's on his way to do something good, but he's interruptible. Can we be interruptible? Can God interrupt you in the good things that you are doing? Can God interrupt you perhaps in the voice, the cry of someone who is hurting, someone who is in need? And then I thought for a while that I would focus in the sermon on the woman. The woman is so interesting. She's been sick for 12 years. And it says she spent all her money on physicians, and they've only made her worse. And she has this flow of blood, which in their world they didn't understand that. So that made her, it's like she had cooties almost, right? Is that a thing people have today? Cooties, you know. She was untouchable. Nobody would go near her, so she had to, lurk in the crowd and sneak up to Jesus. And I've thought about her, and I tried to think about medicines that we have spent ourselves on that have only made us worse. There's a lot of them that we could think about. In our society, we do a lot of self-medication, which we think is going to make us better, but it actually only makes us worse. The worst of all the self-cures is political ideology. I warn you every Sunday if I can. We just think, our political ideology, if my candidate just wins, all will be well. And it only makes you worse, makes you angrier, makes you more frustrated. I wonder what happened after the woman was healed. Like, how did it go for her after that? And you tend to think, she was fine, everything was hunky-dory after that. But I wonder. Sometimes we don't know who we are apart from our suffering. We don't know who we are apart from our troubles. We don't know who we are apart from whatever it is that plagues us. It becomes so much a part of our identity. Did she adapt a new identity, not having the trouble that she had had for so long? I wonder if she was included. She'd been ostracized for so long, she's healed. Do people just immediately welcome her back in? People don't always do this very well. I have a good friend who got married yesterday. Brilliant young man. He's going into the ministry, and years back, he did some really stupid stuff and wound up in jail. And while he was in jail, he heard God's call to become a pastor. So when he got out of jail, the first place that he went was to his home church. He walked in and said, I'm out of jail, and God's called me to be a pastor. And the people of that church basically said, you've been in jail. What are you talking about? They could not welcome him. Thanks be to God, he walked into another church that did welcome him. I think about just the whole fact that the woman was willing to try to get some help. That took some courage. I read this week in a devotional book a guy who wrote this. Sometimes we've known suffering for so long that to hope for anything else can be a gateway to more disappointment. Right? Like, she's had so much disappointment. Dare she hope that this Jesus might do something for her? You can understand why she might not even try, because she's had so much disappointment. Can she take any more? In thinking about her, I thought about some women that I've heard about lately that churches, Christian people are doing amazing things for. We had our session of annual conference up at Lake Junaluska, and one of my favorite parts was we had a long morning report with videos and speakers and all. And it was basically about things that little out-of-the-way churches in the middle of nowhere, sort of with abandoned buildings, where you should just run up the white flag and say, church is done here, there's nothing that can go on. But there are people there, and they've said, let's reach out in some creative way to people in this community. Who are the people near here who are hurting? And they touch people that have never been touched by a church before. They are laying hands and curing people who they felt so left out for the church forever. And I'm so impressed by what they're doing. But then I realized it's such a little out-of-the-way place. These people have no funding stream. That's a false sentence. They do have a funding stream, and their funding stream would be us. And it's why it's so important that we be as generous as possible, because I want us to be the kind of church that we don't just pay for ourselves, but we can see a Methodist church out there in the middle of nowhere, and we can reach out and support them. And then I had another conversation with a guy named Wes Jones. A few of you may know Wes. If you're older, been around a long time, Wes's parents, Edwin and Lou, were longtime members here. They've gone on to glory, and had a FaceTime conversation with Wes the other day that I'll tell you about in a minute. It was kind of funny. When we got on, I said, Wes, I got a story about your mom. He said, what is it? So Lou, his mom, to say she was a character, that's just such an understatement. And one Sunday, my in-laws, Lisa's parents, came to teach their Sunday school class. And they showed up, and Lisa's dad has laryngitis, like nothing's coming out of his mouth. So Lisa's mom had to teach the class. So when the class was over, Edwin comes up to my father-in-law, Lou's standing right behind him, and he says, I don't know what you've got, but I wish Lou had it. Which is a funny line. Wes said, yeah, that was my mom. Anyway, what Wes and I were talking about is he, in his retirement, instead of, what do you do when you're retired? You put your feet up and you play golf and you have a great time. But what Wes is doing with his retirement and with the money that he earned in his life is he's supporting this great medical ministry called Cure Americas. And they're doing great work in Bolivia and Kenya, all these out-of-the-way places. And it's primarily centered on women and mothers and children. They do amazing work. And Wes is saying, what can Myers Park do for us? And you're the answer to that question. Like, your generosity makes us able to reach out to Bolivia and Kenya and such. But then I thought, I'm not going to focus on the woman. I'm going to focus on the little 12-year-old child. And the reason I made this decision is that God spoke to me during annual conference. And God spoke to me at a very unusual place, because I was at dinner on Thursday night, as I am every year during annual conference. On Thursday night, I meet two of my close friends who live elsewhere. And we always go to this restaurant in Waynesville called Fat Buddies. And whatever you imagine Fat Buddies to be, you got it. That's what it is. We just don't eat anywhere else. We go to Fat Buddies, and it's always great. I was in Fat Buddies. Here's how God spoke to me. My friend Craig is across the table, and he's almost feverish with intensity, and he says, have you read The Anxious Generation? I said, no, tell me about it. He said, it's by Jonathan Haidt. Well, I remember Jonathan Haidt because he wrote this book a few years back that you may have read called The Righteous Mind. And in it, he tries to explain this thing that just baffles all of us in our society. And that's the way that conservative people and progressive people look at one another and think, how could she be such a numbskull? I am so right, it is so clear. How can he be such an imbecile? And he tried to explain how that comes to be. That was an important book. He has now written a more important book, in my view, called The Anxious Generation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. I'm going to reiterate some more later on because I don't have time to get into all of it. In The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt, it's all sociological data, all this testing they've done on thousands and thousands of people worldwide even. He says that the world changed in 2010. And what happened in 2010, you had the advent of Instagram, but that wasn't the biggest game changer. The big change in 2010 was the iPhone 4. Now, the iPhone, we'd had phones before that, flip phones and other phones, but with the iPhone, this is an object lesson. With the iPhone 4, what you have is you have the entire World Wide Web, everything that there is out there. And you know that what's out there, like, they're trying to make money, they're trying to get you addicted to what they're about. Anyway, it's just right there at your fingertips. And they've actually showed how, like, this inhibits thinking. Like, since we got these, you can say to somebody, what is 9 times 7? And they go, no. Like, really? Who was the 6th president of the United States? Anyway, our brains used to work better. What Jonathan Haidt traces, though, are children who grew up with the iPhone 4 or later. And he's concerned about kids and young adults. I think it impacts absolutely every one of us. And what they've studied, and they can link it to the phones, is that since the iPhone 4 in 2010, they've charted these things with statistics. There has since then been a massive spike, not a small increase, but a massive spike in anxiety, depression, suicide, boredom, all these terrible things Kids feel empty. Young adults feel bored. Young adults feel hopeless. And he says it affects boys and girls differently. The way it affects boys, they've studied this, is that for boys, they lose themselves in gaming and then in pornography. Because with porn sites, they ask, are you over a certain age? You can be 11 and check. Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? But with girls, it's something different. With girls, it's self-image that has eroded. Because what happened with the iPhone 4 is that not only do you have the internet, but you also have the reversible camera. And what you can do with the reversible cameras, what you see me doing actually a lot, is taking selfies. Before, that was really hard to do, to take a photo of yourself. But with the reversible camera, it's easy to take a photo of yourself. So then when they've started all this, what girls do over and over is they take a photo of themselves and they look at it on their phone and they think, I don't look as good as I want to look. So you can edit your own photo. You can improve. You can make yourself look a little better. And then they've shown a young girl post her photo on Instagram or wherever, and she might get some likes, but she might also get just one ugly remark, and it's devastating. Haidt says all of this coincides with another terrible mistake that parents have made in the recent generation. And so to talk about this, I have to begin a sentence by saying, when I was a kid, and I always promised myself in sermons, I'm never going to say something like, when I was a kid. Because when you say, when I was a kid, you just sound really old and like you're a dinosaur, but I don't know how else to do it. When I was a kid, here goes. When I was a kid, in the morning, in the summertime, my parents would kick me and my sister out of the house, and we were just out all day on our own. They didn't know where we were going. They didn't know what we were doing. If you went out and you were playing a game with some kids, there was nobody to resolve difficulties. You had to resolve it yourself. If you fell down and scraped your knee, you had to deal with your knee. If you got hungry out there, you had to find some food. You had to make decisions about what was good to do and what. And he actually has proved that this actually is very good for children. And what parents have done instead is what he calls, I love this word, safetyism. Safetyism. Safetyism is when parents today, they just don't kick their kids out and say, go have a day out there. No, parents are always supervising their children. They've got to be around the right children. They must be in safe places. As it turns out, this is actually harmful for children. Children have to learn how to solve problems and to get hurt now and then and realize they can recover from that. He compares it to the growth of trees. Did you know that you can grow a tree in a greenhouse? And if you grow a tree in a greenhouse, after 2 or 3 years, it just falls over. Isn't that interesting? Trees need wind. Trees need storms. Trees need the bugs that crawl all over them. Trees need whatever it is that happens. Trees need to be stressed in order to grow and to be strong as trees, and the same thing is true with children. So Haidt's conclusion is that we have been overprotecting children in the real world while underprotecting them online. And the effects of this are just absolutely disastrous. Now, I'm reading the book, because Craig said I need to read the book, and it's full of this great information, but by the last chapter, I am so depressed. Because I've lived in this world, you've lived in this world. Lisa and I went to dinner recently. We got halfway to the restaurant. I didn't have my phone. Like my pulse shot up. And you'll be amazed, like we made it through dinner. I was amazed. Anyway, but then my kids, I raised my kids and they had this, all this. And so I just think it's too late, it's too late. Haidt begins his last chapter by saying, it's not too late. It's not too late. So he's got a formula in there about what you can do to begin to move towards some healing, what you can do to begin to find some healing, some hope, some change out of all of this. I'll tell you his recipe, but first there's this. This is super interesting. Our youth minister, Jason Reimer, was here earlier, and he sent me this is the good use of a phone, by the way. Is that when our kids come to church here, they can't keep their phones. We make them put their phones down, and they actually have a liturgy for this. Listen to this. The kids say, we surrender our phones to acknowledge that we are not as essential as we would have ourselves believe, and to recognize how essential we are to this moment, this conversation, this place. We put down our phones to put down the false belief that we can be more places than here, doing more things than this, and to commit to being fully present here and now. We turn off our phones to turn toward each other and the moment at hand with full attention, creativity, and welcome. We do this at our church. We have a cool church, my friends. Jonathan Haidt has a different recipe, although it would include that. He's not a pastor. He's not a theologian. He's not especially a religious person. But his recipe for what we need to do as a society sounds suspiciously like what we tell you all the time in church that we need to be about. So here goes. What he says, since it's not too late to bring about change, is, among other things, he says spirituality is a thing that matters. And in spirituality, what you try to do is you try to minimize the number of things that draw you down, and you try to increase the percentage of things that draw you upward. So you try to minimize what drags you down into what is profane and what is and you try to maximize what draws you up toward beauty, even toward God. He said these phones almost entirely pull you down toward what is profane. I love that he said almost entirely, because James Howell's emails and texts come on your phone. It's not all bad, but it tends to draw us down. He points out that in religion, part of the goal is self-transcendence. When you come here to church, we say, you're not the center of the universe. And that should be a great relief to us. Thank God I don't have to be the center of the universe. I don't have to carry this whole world on my shoulders. But everything in this phone says you're the center of the world. What do you take? Selfies. It's all about you. Haidt says that religion should make us less judgmental. I mean, this is a place of mercy. This is a place of grace. This is where we do not pass judgment on others or ourselves. But on the internet, it's all about how many likes do you get? How many likes do you get? How many ugly remarks do you get? It's all about judgment. He said these phones draw our attention so dangerously away. He would not put it this way, but I would. From what God has strewn all around us. The healing that you need in your soul comes from awe. You go outside and you just look at clouds, feel a breeze. There's a little stream. There's a bird singing a song. There's a dog wallowing on his back. There's a tree that's growing. It's outside. It can survive a long time. There's something about that awe. That's why it's good for children to go outside and to play hard all day. He says we need community. We need community. We need a new kind of family. Did you hear it when Mark read Jesus heals the woman and then he addresses her and he calls her, did you hear it? Daughter. Daughter. He's saying to her, there's a new family and you're in. You're a daughter in my family. We need that kind of community of grace. He says we need to do things where we touch each other, where we move together. He says it's so important that we eat together. He says all the technology has led us toward not eating together nearly as much as we did once upon a time. We need to eat together. Friends, we're going to invite you today to do something with your body, and that is to come forward. We're going to, did you notice that when Jesus healed the little girl, everybody else is celebrating, like, she's back, she's still with us. Jesus thinks about her and looks at her and says, give her something to eat. Did you notice that? It's so tender, so lovely. Little girl, she's been lying there a long time. She's got to be hungry. She's a little girl. Give her something to eat. We're going to give you something to eat today. And it's what you are so hungry for, and you're never going to find it here. We're going to give you the grace of God. We're going to feed on the mercy of God. We are going together to be the body of Christ, to be the kind of community where we're always welcoming in new daughters, new sons, and we love them enough to let them have struggles, and yet to stand with them and to love them. and to be with them, and that we learn to have awe, not just in nature, but in the goodness, the wonder of God. Friends, for this we give thanks to God. Hope you'll feel some of that as you come forward this day, in this moment, with these people, for this purpose. There's no other place here, now. Thanks be to God.